C'est l'histoire d'un petit gars de l'Arkansas devenu le 42e président des États Unis. Ma vie, Bill Clinton, merci infiniment d'être avec nous pour cette émission. Ce livre est un événement. On a l'impression quand on lit ce livre extrêmement touchant à certains moments, notamment quand vous racontez votre enfance. Vous n'avez jamais cessé de courir après ce rêve. Vous écriviez, vous avez des notes dans ce livre disant « j'ai toujours cherché à être un homme, à devenir quelqu'un de bien ». Ça a toujours été ça. Vous citez une chanson des Beatles, vous dites prendre une chanson triste et la rendre meilleure. Ça a été votre rêve comme ça, améliorer les choses?
Yes, I always did, and I for some reason, as you see from the book, saved most of the material from my childhood. The papers I wrote when I was 9 and 10 years old, every letter my mother ever sent me or I ever sent her. I have lots of memories of that. And I think I was always in a hurry, as I say early on in the book, in some measure because my father died before I was born. So I grew up with only received memories of my father. He was not even 30 when he died. So I think I always had this feeling, well, I have to live for two people. I have to get a lot done. I can't miss a day. I can't miss a moment. And on balance, it's given me a very good life.
Alors il y a évidemment ce père que vous n'avez hélas pas connu puisque votre mère était enceinte de 6 mois quand il est décédé accidentellement, et puis il y a George Clinton, ce beau-père que vous allez aimer malgré tout. C'est-à-dire il est alcoolique, il est violent, vous avez des souvenirs terribles et jusqu'au bout, jusqu'à sa maladie, son cancer, vous allez être auprès de lui. Vous dites il va lutter contre la maladie, finalement ça va être sa grande victoire.
It was. His finest hour was the way he handled his cancer and his death. My stepfather was essentially a very good man. Like most alcoholics are really good people who were defeated by a terrible problem, an addiction to alcoholism, that most of them try to conquer it all by themselves. And particularly back then, this was a long, long time ago, people didn't so easily ask for help then. They didn't so easily understand that it was a disease with a biochemical basis, not just emotional weakness. And I saw him more as a tragic figure than a bad man. I didn't like what he did, but I never hated him.
Vous dites même que vous aimez aller dans les cimetières. C'est curieux parce qu'on voit dans ce livre, Ma vie, il y a ces deux parts de vous. C'est-à-dire la vie, je le disais quand même, ce petit gars de l'Arkansas qui devient le président des États-Unis, le maître du monde, on pourrait dire en quelque sorte. Et puis en même temps, il y a cette vie, ces coups durs de la vie. Vous dites, quand je reçois des coups, j'ai toujours appris, il faut avancer.
Yeah, I always had a sense that there was a bright side and a dark side of life. I was more at home with the fact of death and my own mortality because my father died before I was born. So I always loved cemeteries. Cemeteries were a place where I got in touch with my roots and my humanity. All over the world I visit them, still today. And I also realized that you had to fight. My whole operating style from the time I was a child is that I was not an aggressor. I would never hurt anyone. But I would never become a victim. I would never be hurt without fighting back. And it's worked pretty well for me all the way through 2 terms as president.
Alors, ce livre, Bill Clinton, qui est un événement, on a pu dire il a quasiment éclipsé la campagne présidentielle américaine, étant donné son succès. On pourrait se dire, vous l'avez fait pour ça, ou alors vous l'avez fait parce qu'Hillary n'avait pas tout dit dans le sien. Parce que vos 2 vies sont tellement imbriquées.
They are interlinked, but I disagree that it's eclipsed the presidential campaign. I tried to get this book out at the very moment I did because I knew it would be a downtime. Americans they can't think about this presidential campaign constantly for a whole year or 9 months. And it had the big run in America before our convention in late July and the Republican convention in early September. So that's what I tried to do, to get it out, put it into the public debate, let people see that how the modern Democratic and Republican parties were formed, what the differences are, what the consequences to ordinary Americans are. I wanted to write a book that an ordinary citizen could understand and like and still become, in a way, more knowledgeable about politics. But then it will fade from the dominance as our conventions and the campaign gets underway. So it'll work just perfectly. And then September, I will come back to Europe for another tour and then go to Asia.
Ce livre, il nous parle de votre vie, mais c'est aussi l'histoire de l'Amérique. Et c'est une autre Amérique, on a l'impression, par rapport à aujourd'hui. C'est une Amérique forte qui n'a pas besoin de faire trembler le monde. C'est une Amérique généreuse qui cherche la conciliation. Il y a aujourd'hui une autre Amérique. Ça vous fait de la peine quand vous voyez l'image aujourd'hui de l'Amérique. C'est une Amérique guerrière, c'est une Amérique dominatrice.
Well, I regret the image. And I think it is largely the result of the differences over Iraq and not only the differences, but the condemnation that the current government in America issued against the French and others who disagreed with us, plus other unilateral actions like the comprehensive getting out of the Test Ban Treaty, the Kyoto Climate Change Treaty, the International Criminal Court, and the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. And I regret it too because, in fact, this administration has not been entirely unilateral. For example, they have been able to get more money than I could get out of the Republican Congress to fight AIDS. So they've done some good things, but the rhetoric and the big unilateral actions and the condemnation, it's more the condemnation of people who disagreed with us over Iraq has separated us from the world. We need to cure that. We can cure it, but we must cure it.
Ouais. Vous parliez tout à l'heure, en quelque sorte en vous, du bien et du mal qui existe en vous, parce que vous avez vos faiblesses. Je veux dire, en France, vous êtes très populaire, et c'est aussi pour ces faiblesses qu'on vous aime. Aujourd'hui, il y a George Bush, président, qui lui parle de l'axe du bien et de l'axe du mal. En quelque sorte, vous voyez ce que je veux dire? C'est-à-dire, c'est une autre situation. C'est une situation de confrontation.
Well, I think there is good and evil in life, but the truth is, most of life's problems are not so easily put into two-dimensional categories. Most people and most problems are complex, three-dimensional characters. And I think that one of the things about the right in America is they like to make myths, you know. They like to deify what they like and demonize what they dislike. Yeah, I prefer to tell stories, and that's why I told my life as a story. Because I think it's important that people learn to come to grips with all these complex good and bad things going on in the world and then try to put them in patterns, which is what I try to do, and build consensus for positive action. It's a difference in not just political philosophy, but in approach to life, I think.
Vous parlez du Vietnam dans ce livre, de votre expérience, de la douleur que ça a représenté pour vous, de dire votre soutien évidemment à votre pays et en même temps votre horreur de la guerre. Vous diriez aujourd'hui par rapport à ce qui se passe en Irak, c'est la même chose? Est-ce qu'on pourrait dire avec un Michael Moore par exemple, un film Fahrenheit 9/11 qui a du succès en France, qui montre une autre image de l'Amérique, ça vaudrait le coup aujourd'hui pour un soldat américain d'aller risquer sa vie en Irak? Est-ce que ça a un sens?
Well, I think the thing that troubled a lot of us about Iraq, there were two or three things that troubled me about it. I strongly supported President Bush when he went to the UN the first time, as did France, and said you have to let these inspectors back in, because everybody thought they had some chemical and biological materials left. And we didn't want them to fall into the hands of the terrorists. I was troubled because they didn't let the inspectors finish the job before attacking. I was troubled because they used the UN authority, but they really wanted to attack for other reasons. They thought whether he had weapons or not, the Americans did, it was a good thing to overthrow Saddam, shake up the authoritarianism of the Middle East, maybe increase our leverage in the Middle East peace process. So that bothered me. The third thing that bothered me was that by giving so much attention to Iraq, we didn't have as many soldiers as I would like to have seen go into Afghanistan to help President Karzai secure the whole country and to really pursue bin Laden and the al-Qaeda leadership, who are much more dangerous to the United States, to France, to the world than Saddam Hussein. So I had a different take on it. But I think what we have to focus on now is, you know, what we can do to put the world back together again and have a common effort.
Ouais. George Bush dit « Le monde est plus sûr depuis la guerre en Irak ».
I don't think the war in Iraq has made the world safer, and Iraq is still a very dangerous place. But I do believe that the United States and the West probably are a little safer than they were for other reasons. That is, I think our international cooperation against terror has increased. We've taken down about 20 plus Al-Qaeda cells. Our understanding of the requirements of homeland defense have increased. Our Congress just passed a bill called the BioShield bill yesterday or day before, which will increase our ability to deal with the threats of biological weapons attacks. So I do think we're slowly becoming better equipped to defend ourselves against terror. But I disagree that the Iraq enterprise has made a big contribution to that. Now, having said that, I believe the world would be better off if Iraq now succeeds as a genuinely representative, non-aggressive, peaceful place. And the fact that the United States has gone back to the UN, we have a new UN resolution, we have a new UN coordinator, he is a Pakistani Muslim protected by Pakistani troops, is, I think, quite a good thing. So now I think everyone in the world should go back and participate in trying to make Iraq work. Because there's no question that whether you agree with the war or not, if Iraq were a more democratic and more humane and non-aggressive state, it would be good for the Middle East and good for the Iraqis.
Kerry, s'il était élu, mettrait un terme à cette opération?
Well, I believe the operation as objected to by France and others is on the way to being ended even under President Bush. That is, keep in mind, there is an interim government there. It has been recognized and sanctioned by the United Nations. There is now a new United Nations coordinator either there or on the way there. So the unilateralism of the American involvement is fading fast. But I believe if John Kerry were there, he would leave enough troops there to try to, as long as the Iraqi government, in the exercise of its sovereignty, wanted us to stay there, I think he would leave some troops there to try to stabilize the situation. But I think he would also encourage the involvement of more countries, perhaps NATO and others, and would make it utterly clear that we have no interest in controlling the contracts or any of that. The more we can internationalize Iraq, the more our chances of success.
Alors, vous dites dans ce livre, vous avez eu des regrets, bien sûr, de ne pas avoir mis fin aux agissements de Ben Laden. Et puis, un autre regret, il y a cette image extraordinaire de cette poignée de main Rabin-Arafat. Et puis, vous dites clairement que Yasser Arafat, avant la fin de votre mandat, il a laissé passer une chance historique d'accepter un accord avec les Israéliens, ouvrant la voie à l'arrivée d'Ariel Sharon aux affaires en Israël. Vous diriez par contre aujourd'hui que les États-Unis devraient rééquilibrer leurs relations. Est-ce que Yasser Arafat ne devrait pas être, j'allais dire, remis en selle d'une certaine façon par rapport à la construction du mur, par rapport à la situation explosive dans cette région?
Well, let me deal with those things separately. I think, first of all, Arafat did a lot of good things when I was president. He signed the agreement with Rabin in '93. He signed the agreement it resulted in the turnover of Hebron and Jericho to the Palestinians in '94. He signed the agreement with Netanyahu at Wye River in '98. And he told me we were going to have an agreement in 2000. I think he made a colossal mistake not to take Barack's acceptance of my peace plan. But I'm still not sure why. It's become obvious, I think, in the last 2.5, 3 years, that the other Palestinians cannot completely cut him out. So the trick is how to deal with the government of the Palestinians under Abu Ala, the prime minister, and still recognize that Arafat has an important role that goes beyond symbolism. And I still think that Arafat, I think we're going to get another chance to make peace here. When Shimon Peres goes into the National Unity Government with Ariel Sharon, I think they will complete the Gaza pullout, and they will at least pull back in the West Bank to the wall. I have a different view of the wall than many advocates of peace in the Middle East. As long as it is absolutely clear that it is not the final border, that Israel is prepared to negotiate according to the UN resolutions, which means it would have to be taken down or moved. And as long as the Israeli Supreme Court decision is followed so they don't disrupt the Palestinians' lives unduly, the wall might work as it has in Gaza to reduce death. And if it reduces Israeli deaths, it will also reduce Palestinian deaths. Keep in mind, since this intifada started in September of 2000, you have over 900 dead Israelis, average age 24, over 3,000 dead Palestinians, average age 18. So the wall is a terrible red flag to wave in front of the Palestinians if it disrupts their lives and if it's seen as, well, here, you get this and nothing more. Then I'm against it. But if it can be presented as simply what it is, a potential life-saving measure that is a temporary device, not a permanent border, then it might actually contribute to a climate in which the Israelis feel more secure in giving up the West Bank to the Palestinians for their state. That's what I hope will happen.
Pour revenir sur le livre, Monsieur Clinton, il y a une certaine image que vous avez véhiculée. Vous citez, je le disais au début, beaucoup de chansons. Il y a la musique. Il y a une certaine image finalement, cette image de l'Amérique dont on parlait il y a quelques instants, une certaine joie. On se souvient de votre fou rire avec Boris Yeltsin, vous en parlez dans ce livre, finalement de ce président russe, voilà, de vos relations avec finalement les chefs d'État. Vous dites beaucoup, il y a beaucoup d'anecdotes dans ce livre. C'est-à-dire qu'on peut faire de la politique comme ça, avec un certain bonheur.
I think you have to, you know, the people who lead countries are people too. And I found that very few of them got there by accident. Most of them got there because they were able, hardworking people. Most of them were honest, committed people. And I enjoyed forming personal relationships with them. We would disagree. They would pursue their national interest. I would pursue mine. But having those personal relationships mattered. I had a personal relationship with President Mitterrand. I had a personal relationship with President Chirac. We were quite good friends, and we are quite good friends, even though our politics were different. Lionel Jospin, when he came in and got involved in our Third Way movement, I developed a personal relationship with him. These things I think are good, not bad, because they don't stop leaders from pursuing their different interests, but they keep a little edge off politics. And a lot of those people are friends of mine today.
Et alors, sur ces affaires d'attaque permanente contre votre vie privée, venant notamment des Républicains, vous dites très clairement, derrière cela, il se cache finalement une autre vision de l'Amérique, une vision puritaine, une vision où les libertés sont restreintes. Mais vous avez été toujours attaqué comme ça vous n'a pas donné à certains moments, pendant l'affaire Monica Lewinsky, Paula Jones ou d'autres, envie d'arrêter, de vous dire c'est ma vie avec Hillary qui doit privilégier tout?
Well, if you mean that I want to quit, resign the presidency, the answer to that is no. Because I couldn't afford to let them win. I had always been subject to personal attacks, but they were of a different nature. When I started out in politics, the press still wasn't thirsty for those sort of personal attacks. I mean, the Republicans just served it up because they knew that's what the press wanted to talk about. But no, when they began to attack me personally, it increased my determination to stay. Because if I had given in to those personal attacks, then the political agenda of the far right would have been advanced, and everything I had fought for would have been set back. So I don't make any excuses for myself and the mistakes I made, but they didn't have anything to do with my conduct of the presidency or what was right and good for the American people over the long run. And I never considered quitting. I wanted them to know that if they thought they could bully me out of the office, they were sadly mistaken. They might be able to run me out and get the American people to abandon me, but as long as the American people stayed with me, I was going to stay. I didn't care how much it hurt, how much personal pain I had to endure. And interestingly enough, Hillary didn't want me to quit. My daughter didn't want me to quit. As mad as they were at me over the Lewinsky affair, they were more angry that the way the Constitution and the fabric of American government were being shredded by these people who were power hungry. So I had the support of my family, the support of the American people. My staff and cabinet stayed with me, and so we fought. It was painful to read the papers every day,
Ouais.
but we eventually won.
Ouais. Et en France, vous étiez soutenu. Savez-vous que on n'a pas compris finalement tout cela. C'est-à-dire, on aurait presque tendance à dire que vous étiez encore plus populaire de ce qui vous arrivait d'une certaine façon. C'est-à-dire dans la conscience que ça fait partie de la vie. On n'a pas compris, si vous voulez. C'est vrai, il y a eu le 11 septembre. Ensuite, comment l'Amérique, à ce moment-là, a pu vivre un tel psychodrame sur elle. C'est pas le signe finalement d'une crise morale?
No, I think more it was a political crisis. I think that in our country, at least, whenever we change dramatically the way we work and live, and we changed dramatically from 1989 over, we moved from a Cold War world to a security environment that was interdependent, dominated by terror and weapons of mass destruction. We moved from an industrial era dominated by Europe, the US, and Japan into a global information technology era. Whenever big changes like that happen, we have big political fights, and they often get quite personal. So I just was the recipient of the historical moment, but I decided we could get through it, and we did.
Merci, Monsieur Clinton. Il y a eu des images au moment où vous avez quitté le pouvoir. On vous voyait finalement vous ennuyer comme un retraité vis-à-vis de votre femme qui sera peut-être présidente des États Unis en 2008. Hein. Vous dites ce livre s'appelle Ma vie, mais on sait bien que votre vie n'est pas terminée. Qu'est-ce que vous voudriez d'une part qu'on retienne de votre image de président, et puis finalement, on a l'impression que vous n'arrêterez jamais en fait. Pas de retraite.
Well, first I'd like for you to remember that I tried to bring the world together and lift the world up and move forward together into the new century, rich and poor across all continents and all races and religions. As we look forward, I hope Senator Kerry wins this election. If he does, my wife and I will be working for him in 2008. But I want her to have a good, long political career. She is the most able person I have ever known in politics, and I will support her. As for me, I look forward to going back full-time when this book tour is over and my library is dedicated in November. I will become a full-time public servant again as a non-governmental organization. I work on AIDS. I work on economic projects in poor communities in America and around the world. I work on education programs, and I work on religious and racial and ethnic understanding in the Middle East and Africa and America. So I stay busy, and I think I do a lot of good. I hope I do. I'm having a good time.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bill Clinton, Ma vie est publié chez Odile Jacob. C'est un livre événement. C'est l'histoire de l'Amérique, c'est votre histoire et c'est souvent très touchant. Merci d'avoir été avec nous.
Thank you. That was terrific. Thank you.
Formidable, merci.
Thank you very much.
You want me to sign? Is that your copy?
Oh, yes.